Welcome to the What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting podcast show. If you're a foster mom, on the journey to adoption, already adopted, or somewhere in the middle, trying to figure out how to navigate the foster care system, wanting to grow your family through adoption, trying to balance everything, or stuck in that space of all things unknown, you're in the right place. What if there was a way to fast track your knowledge, prepare you for the good and the hard, and somebody who could answer that long list of questions I know you have? Hi friend, I'm Christine Marie, biblical mindset coach, adoptive mom, and previous foster parent of 77 children. Yep, you heard that right, 77 kiddos. I'm your host, and my goal is to help make your journey a lot easier by sharing my best tools, techniques, and skills that helped me pivot from foster care to adoption, fully surrender, and trust the process. I'm about to bring some calm to the chaos and show you how to navigate through this journey with a whole lot of grace. So go grab your cup of coffee and let's jump in. So today's episode is one that I am really excited about. If you have ever felt like, gosh, I'm getting so attached to these incredible foster children, maybe you have gone through experiences where you didn't get to see them again. Or maybe you wondered, am I loving too much? This story is probably going to change your thinking on how massive your impact can be in the lives of not only foster kiddos, not only your adoptive kiddos, but their birth families. Eternal impact. And so today I'm so excited to welcome Jeremy Walden to the podcast. Jeremy, if you could just spend a few moments and tell us about you, just you personally, and what led you to become a foster parent.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. So I live in Auburn, Alabama, and what brought me to Auburn, Alabama was ministry. I came here as a youth minister way back in the late 90s, so we've lived here a very long time. But while I was here, I met my wife, and we just celebrated our 25th anniversary, so we were super excited about that. Yes. But we decided to stay here and raise our family here. Once we started having children, we had our first two children very easily. And then we got pregnant for a third time and had a miscarriage. We got pregnant for a fourth time, had another miscarriage. At that point, we started having conversations about adoption because we did want more children, but we weren't really sure it was going to be possible for us to have biological children moving forward. So that really opened up that conversation to the point that we started actually talking to adoption agencies, just starting the conversation. But ultimately, my wife got pregnant again, and we had a child, our third biological child. Then we got pregnant again. And at that point, those two last pregnancies were very difficult for my wife physically. She did not do well. And when they were born, there was some actual risk to my wife's health during those births. And so at that point, we decided we couldn't do it. We weren't going to risk her health or a baby's health moving forward. So as way before or right when we first met each other, we had, the great conversation. How many kids do you want? Do you want children? And somewhere along the way, we thought, well, we would really like to have 5 children. So at that point, we had 4 biological children. We had never forgotten about adoption. So we started that conversation seriously. Let's adopt the 5th. We started talking to agencies more seriously, but we were shocked when we started talking to them because they are the ones who said, we don't think you're a right fit for an adoption agency. And the reason they said that is because we already had 4 children, and the adoption agencies, the way that ours work around here at least, is that it would be birth parent preference. And because we already had children, they just didn't think we would ever be picked because most birth parents pick smaller families or couples that have no children. And so the fact that we already had 4, they kind of ruled that out. So they are the ones who suggested foster care to us. Now, we knew nothing about foster care. We had no direct connection. We didn't really know anybody who had done it. And in all honesty, I didn't know you could even adopt through foster care. And that's not even the point of foster care.
Right.
We get that. And so, but they are the ones who suggested it. So we started looking into it more and more, and it just became clear to us that this is something we needed to do, whether we ended up adopting or not, that I mean, my wife and I are big believers that if God says it, we should do it. And if we're supposed to take care of the orphans, this is the best way for us to do it. So we took that challenge head on and accepted it personally and pursued it. Well, we got licensed in 2014. We did not get our first placement until 2015. And the first placement we ever had was a young girl, horrible situation, 2-year-old little girl that came to us, but she only stayed with us a few days because they found a family member to go to. So it was an incredibly beautiful experience, but it was shocking to us because of how of a devastating situation she was coming from. Like it was newsworthy in our town, the situation that she was coming from. So, but that was like super quick, kind of baptism by fire into what foster care is like. But it was a great first experience. And then it was after that we got our first long-term placement.
Okay.
She was also a 2-year-old little girl that came to us, completely different circumstances, but she came to us at 2 years old. And ultimately, long story short, we adopted her. But that's where the story begins with that second little girl that came to us that eventually we adopted.
Wow. It's interesting because our stories line up so similarly. We had 2 biological children, and it was both pregnancies were really hard on me, and to the point that the doctors said I was so high risk, they recommended that I don't have any more children. So that's a really hard decision to make. I know for us, we weren't even looking at adoption or foster care. I was perfectly happy with our 2. I was really young. I think I was 24 when the doctors told me that. And so, but you take it really seriously when doctors tell you something like that. And so that's what led us to foster care as well. And our first situation was actually on the news. It was an FBI case, and it was definitely baptism by fire of oh my goodness, this is it was unbelievably, you just definitely, that's when you realize there is evil in this world. And not that you didn't know it, but when you can see these tangible results with children, it's absolutely gut-wrenching. But I think it also pushed us forward to continue fostering because the need is truly so great.
That's right.
So you got this 2-year-old little girl, and what happened next?
So a couple things about that. When she came to us, like several of the foster children that we experienced after this, she was scared of me. Just as a man, as the father in the house, she had had really bad experiences with the men in her life, specifically her dad and his relationship with her mom. And so she was completely frightened of me when she came. And so she only wanted to be around my wife and my other children at the time, which I've come to realize that was normal, but it was shocking to me.
I do want to bring up that point because this is very, very normal.
Yes.
And so if you are married and you walk through the situation and your foster children have this same feeling with your husband or spouse, just know this is very, very normal. Yes. And I didn't realize how normal it was, but it was in a lot of the foster kids we took. They had very traumatizing experiences. And I know that's not across the board, but especially with men or the father figure.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it was very hard for my husband to process that. You almost have to take a hands-off approach in your own household.
Yes.
Which is very different, especially because, you guys already have 4 kids, right?
Right. Yes.
Right. So you're having to rework this whole dynamic of how do we parent right now? Yeah. Sorry. I just really wanted to interject because I feel like it's so important for whether you're a new foster parent or your experience. If you've never experienced this dynamic, just know this is normal.
And it's happened to us multiple times at this point.
Yeah.
But the first time it happened, it was shocking to me.
Yeah.
And it became a new normal. Right. The good news is that it didn't last very long.
Yeah.
In a couple of weeks, I had been able to build trust with her, and it's been fine ever since. But those first couple of weeks were tough. What I remember about that when she first came is she was, of course, a beautiful young girl, fragile, needy. And we did the best that we could to take care of her. But like in the moment, I think one of the memories that I have is just how difficult it was to try to feed her because she just wasn't used to the food that we had.
Right.
So things like fruit, she'd either never eaten them or didn't know what they were and didn't want to taste them. I can remember multiple times we would fix dinner for the whole family, give her a plate. She would throw the plate of food or push the food away, which is also normal. But being our first time, with a long-term placement, that was kind of shocking. But overall, when she first came, we had a belief that we were not there just for her. Like this was an underlying belief that we had, that if God was going to bring a child into our life, that we could help the biological family just as much as we could help this child. Like we came into foster care with that belief. And so we took that challenge seriously. And so we got to know this little girl, but we also got to know her mother. We got to know her grandmother. We got to know her aunts over the first few months. And we went out of our way to try to get to know them and to try to build a relationship with them. So I think it's pretty common for families to meet during weekly visitations, but we went further than that. We tried to invite them to extra visits. We would go to the park. We celebrated birthdays together at restaurants just to try to keep the family dynamic going and let that family know that we were just as much for them. And even though we wanted to adopt, ultimately we know that wasn't the point. And so we were hoping for reunification. That started off really, really well. And we built a great relationship with them. But over time, we had this little girl for 3 years before the process ended in termination of parental rights and the ability for us to adopt her. So even though our relationship with them started off strong, as the case carried on and the years carried on and they realized that there was no real possibility of reunification, it turned, from their point of view, it turned into what I think was a pattern of theirs, and that was just fear. It was threats.
Right.
Like if you're not going to give me my way, I'm going to threaten anybody in my path. And that only made the possibility of reunification even worse. But that, in my opinion, that's just how they learned how to react to problems. And we became a problem because they weren't going to be able to get their child back. So we received severe threats from them. My wife, in one of our interactions with them, heard the grandmother threaten the life of one of the social workers. And in some sense, as a mandatory reporter, like my wife told the social workers that, hey, I heard her say this.
Right.
And that got brought up in court while the family was there. And then it became a screaming match in court. And my wife had to have a police escort out of the courtroom that day because the judge felt that my wife's life was threatened in that moment because it was so volatile. There was another time where one of the aunts came to a visit. And in particular, I was dropping off our daughter at this point, but our foster child for visitation. And one of the aunts was filming me on her phone, taking in the child for a visitation. And my wife had gotten so close to them that she began following them on social media. And come to find out, after that visitation was over, one of the aunts posted the video of me with their daughter and said we were trying to steal their daughter and made this huge public scene. And so it became really volatile pretty quick, even though it started well. And ultimately it became so volatile that we cut off all contact, even before TPR occurred.
Right.
And so it just deteriorated, even though we had good intentions. And I think they started off with good intentions too. The fear of losing their daughter ultimately caused them to do some very detrimental things.
As I'm listening to you tell this whole story, I'm thinking about if I were in the situation that they were in.
Yes.
And I'm sure you put yourself in that situation, and it's grieving.
Yes.
Because this whole system is so broken that
And we are just humans living in a fallen world. And when you really break it down, remove all the pieces, the spiritual realm is so real. Sin is so real. And the fear of losing your biological child.
Right.
I mean, I've seen what people will do, lengths that people will go to help their child heal from cancer or heal from terminal illnesses, right? They will literally throw their life down to try and save their child.
Right.
And we say that's okay in that situation. That's understandable. But when they do this in this situation, I have, and this wasn't always my position, right? Because when you're a foster parent, you're just surviving. But when you hindsight is 2020, and I'm sure, and as we continue here the rest of your journey, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that this child had to go through what she had to go through. And then it's heartbreaking that this family didn't have better skills to know how to parent her.
Yes.
And navigate this situation. And it all just falls apart because fear takes over, which is when I'm talking about like the supernatural spiritual realm, right? Is fear is so rooted. The enemy wants nothing more than to tear families apart. It breaks my heart because I can't imagine how desperate they felt, but also for you and your family, how desperate you were for safety.
Yes. So I think ultimately, there's that compassion level, right? You wouldn't be into foster care if you were not compassionate. And you're compassionate for the child, and you are compassionate for the biological family, and you can see it. And like cutting off contact from them, that was not an easy decision, and that was years into the process. So we had tried to care for them, show a lot of compassion, try to build bridges, try to repair broken relationships all along.
Right.
Ultimately, I think we got to a point to where it wasn't even a fear for our safety. It was an actual threat to our biological children's safety that we were like, that's enough. So at some point, we had to set a really, really hard boundary.
Yeah.
As you said, there's more to the story than this. So ultimately, after 3 years of her being in foster care, we were able to adopt her. Now, at that point, because of our previous relationship with her biological family, we did cut off contact, and cut off all ways of even knowing what was happening with her biological family. So we did it, and we carried on, and we fostered more children after we adopted her. But 4 years after adopting her, we get another phone call from our local child services, and they said, "Are you the parents of and the daughter that we adopted?" And we said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, you may not know this, but her biological mother had 2 more children, and they're babies, and they are coming into care." They were actually brought into care on Christmas Day.
Wow.
And this was 2 days later, we got the phone call, and it was because of God's grace that we even got the phone call. It was somebody that was still working there who had been previously there 4 years. She's the one who knew the connection to us.
Right.
And so she's the one who called us and told us that our daughter had siblings that we didn't know anything about. So we easily agreed to that, and they came to us on December the 27th. And we did not tell our daughter that that was her siblings at first because everything is so unpredictable.
Of
We
course.
didn't know if they would be with us a day, 2 days, 2 weeks, or anything like that. But it was obvious. They looked just like her, which is amazing and was beautiful. But we got them, and when we got her 2 siblings, there was a little boy that was her brother was 5 months old, and her sister was 17 months. So very, very young at the time. Most people think they're twins, but they're exactly a year apart, both born in July. But that created another opportunity to build a relationship with their mom.
Right.
So it was a few weeks in before everything got settled, and she found out, and her family, biological family, found out that we got them because that was hidden from them for the first few weeks. Because I think the system and us as well, we didn't know how she would react since it did not go so well the first time around.
Of course.
But this time around, they were super excited that we got them. And I think it was mainly because it was an immediate reunification with their sister that they didn't know anything about either. So
Right.
they were happy for us. And so the whole attitude had shifted at this point, which was very helpful for us to know that it was not going to be hostile. But we were still cautious because it started off friendly the first time around.
Of course.
So we were optimistically cautious as we pursued a relationship. But it was different this time around. Mom was actively seeking help that she wasn't seeking before. And
Right.
so she got the professional help that she needed. She was a few hours away from us. So like weekly visitations were not possible. She also, because of the professional help she was seeking, it just made it impossible to do that. So we got the contact with her and the communication with her, and the visits were very infrequent. So maybe once a month, maybe once every couple of months. But that was actually helpful, I think, in us kind of reconnecting and it still being in a positive way.
Yeah.
Ultimately, she was in rehab, which was awesome for her, and it worked for her. It did not work the first time around, but it worked this time. I think she was much more willing and much more eager to participate. And the beautiful thing about it is this particular rehab had a strong connection to a church. And I don't know if the leaders of the rehab were part of this church or just the church took this rehab center on as a ministry.
Right.
But there was a strong connection, one way or the other. And for the first time, she began going to church,
Wow.
which was amazing. And that continued the positive attitude and interactions we had with her because she knew that about us too, that we were Christians, that we were believers, very involved in church, and that we had consistently taken her children to church, and that had become part of their identity as well. Well, after several months of her being in rehab, going to church, she became a Christian. And
Wow.
yes, which is
That's
amazing.
incredible.
Amazing. And she called my wife specifically to tell her that. And she said, I'm getting baptized and I would love for you guys to come to my baptism, which was
Wow.
a complete honor to be asked. But it was obviously when we wanted to go celebrate that with her,
Right.
but we were cautious as well because she wanted us to bring the whole family, and that included her daughter that we adopted. And they had not seen each other or spoken to each other in 4 years.
Now, did your adoptive daughter remember? Because sometimes when kids are little, they don't have those memories. Did she remember her birth mom, her mom?
She did
Okay.
because she came to us at 2, but we didn't adopt her until she was 5,
Okay.
and she had visitations with her mom the whole time.
Okay.
So she definitely had memories of her. And by the time this came around, we did tell her that these were her siblings. And so she had a strong connection to her siblings at this point in time. And she was excited about it. But we had to have, my wife and I had some serious conversations about how we thought this was going to go, whether or not we thought this would be a helpful reunification.
Right.
Ultimately, it was like, if they're going to reunite, which they will because we have her siblings, and at this point, we didn't know what was going to happen to the siblings. And so we were like, they're going to reunify at some point. Is there a better possible time for them to reunify than at her mom's baptism?
Right.
And we're like,
I can't think of a better
if it's going to happen, this might as well be the time that it happens.
Right.
And so it was it was awesome and it was touching, but the reunification happened inside a church building. After, we met her mom that morning. We're in the foyer of a church when she sees her daughter for the first time in 4 years.
Wow.
And so it's, always envision like the prodigal son. What do you think the prodigal son looked like when the father came running and hugging? That's what it looked like in this church foyer between the mom and the daughter.
And, we know that God predestines our life.
Yes.
And even our mistakes and our errors. He's like, okay, that's fine. I'll let you take that little path, but I have a path for you.
Yes.
And we can choose the path or we cannot choose the path. That's the beauty in our free will. But it's so cool to see that when you are walking in alignment with God and his plan and his purpose for your life, no matter what day you decide to say yes and do that, his plan then comes back together of what he had predestined for you. And it's so cool that his hand, knowing his hand, probably looking back, knowing his hand was on all of this the entire time.
Yes. Yeah. It didn't feel like that
Right.
some
Right.
days, but yes, in hindsight, overwhelmingly, you just walk away. In my experience with foster care, you just know God is faithful. That's just
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
overriding perspective on God, is that he is faithful 100% to
Yeah.
us and to the kids as well. So they became reunified at mom's baptism,
Wow.
and it was beautiful. So that created a connection. We were still cautious about that connection, but we began to make it a point that when she had those occasional visits with her babies, that we also would bring our adopted daughter along so that they could have a few minutes, nothing like the actual visitation with her babies. But we would always try to make it a point to let them see each other as well, even if it was only for 10 minutes, just something small to let them see each other. And
Right.
ultimately, mom did wonderful. She graduated from rehab. She became a very integral part of AA in that community, to the point that she also invited us to her 1-year sobriety celebration, which we didn't know exactly what that was going to look like.
Yeah.
So we gathered the whole family and went to her sobriety celebration, which turned out to be an AA meeting. So our whole family was present for an AA meeting. And she asked my wife to present her with her 1-year token.
Wow.
So my wife got up and spoke on her behalf and, told everybody there how amazing God is and the changes that we had seen in her life. And again, it was just an amazing honor that she asked my wife to do it, because she could have asked anybody, but she chose to ask my wife.
I'm sure I can't even imagine, but as a husband,
Yes.
how validating that was.
Yes. 100%.
To have your wife honored
Yes.
in such a way, because you saw the nights, the tears, the heartbreak, the devastation.
Yes.
And to watch her be honored, I just, what a beautiful moment.
Yes. And it was, no one does it for the recognition, or at least you shouldn't.
Nobody, I can't imagine.
But sometimes it's nice
100%.
to be seen.
Yes.
But it was also in that moment, it is a proud dad. It's a proud husband moment, right?
Yeah. Right.
But it's also, the moment was to celebrate this mother who God changed, who God resurrected from the dead.
Right.
And we were not the only people. My wife was not the only person who spoke. There were other people who got up and testified to God's faithfulness in her life and how they've seen her change, which was also amazing to hear, because from a distance, you never know. People can say they change, but you never really know. So it was also validating to hear other people say that they saw her change. But it was also eye-opening for my whole family, for my biological kids, to sit through an AA meeting, to have that experience, even though they were younger.
Right.
To see it's okay. We're all broken. It's okay to admit that we're not better than anybody else present.
Yeah.
And it's great to celebrate what God can do.
Amen.
And so it was just a great experience altogether. But those two events happened within months of each other, her baptism and her 1-year sobriety. And she invited us to participate in both of those, which we thought were huge milestones.
Absolutely.
Not only for her, but for our relationship with her.
Right.
She was honoring us and in a way thanking us for our participation, and not just raising her children, but some type of influence we might have had in her life as well. So it was just a wonderful, wonderful moment. Over time, she was doing so well that our local judge decided it was time for reunification. And so we started this process slowly of her getting to have them on weekends. And in all honesty, we thought it went a little faster than it should, but she was doing exceptionally well. And so they granted her the right to have the children back. So it was an extremely difficult time for us, but particularly my wife, because at that point we had them for 2.5 years. And because we were able to adopt our daughter, we always thought it was potentially going to be, we would get to adopt them too. So we always thought that they might live with us forever. At least we had that thought
Right.
in our mind. We were glad that mom was doing well, but also because it had taken 2.5 years.
Right.
At some point you start thinking, regardless of how mom is doing, if we've been involved in it this long, it may go to TPR. So
Right.
anyway, there was this struggle, I think, to be honest, about what was the right way, what was best for the kids, etc. But we went through the process. She got the children back. And at the court day where the judge decided that, after the court date was over, or after the court session was over, we went out into the lobby of the courtroom. We hugged each other, but I specifically asked, is there any way we can still be involved? Like, we know that they're yours, they're going to stay with you, and we celebrate that and are excited about that. But we do have your daughter, and
Yeah.
for her sake, we would love for y'all to continue to have a relationship. But now that she knows she has siblings, it's going to be heartbreaking to her if she never gets to see her siblings again. So we would love to continue a relationship between you and all of your children.
Right.
And we would like to play a role because now we've become attached to your babies as well, if you will allow us to. So in that moment, we just asked for that permission.
Yeah.
And we didn't put pressure, like, we got to do this. We were just like, this is our request. We would love to stay involved. We don't know what it would look like, but if we could possibly take on like a grandparent role,
Yeah.
we would love that. And part of what brought that about, that specific idea, is that during the process of us having her babies, their mom's mother passed away. So the grandmother in this biological family passed away. And so now this new mom had no mom and had no relationship with a father. So these babies would not have any biological grandparents.
Right.
And so we thought that might be a natural place for us to stand in if we could, if
Right.
mom allowed it. And so they went back, and that is the role we have taken on. They have been very excited about that. And we just had them this weekend with us.
Wow.
Over the
That's
weekend.
amazing.
And so we, on purpose, have continued. They still live 2.5 hours away from us, but we've continued to keep a relationship with them. They come to Thanksgiving at our house, the whole family comes to Thanksgiving. They spend the night here. They come for Christmas. We do normal family things, as grandparents. And we have loved that role, and they have enjoyed that role. And it's kept a good relationship between our adopted daughter and her mom as well. They they see each other when she comes here, but they talk to each other on the phone as well. And so that's been a great bridge to their relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's been really, really nice.
That's amazing. It's just, I can't imagine. Actually, I can't imagine, because I've been there and done that, as far as having children be reunified and you lose a piece of your heart.
Yes.
But I haven't been in a situation where that gets to continue.
Yes.
And
we
God
know it's
just
rare.
redeems it.
Yes. We know it's rare. 100%. It's amazing, though.
It really is rare. And, but I think a lot of this happened because you guys did something that's rare. And what you both did is you said, we don't want to just support this child. We want to support their family. And so I think it's how, even though things went upside down and backwards and sideways,
Yes.
most people don't go into fostering and say, it's more than the child I want to do. I want to care and love for and support this entire family.
Right.
And so I think that's just as rare as what happened. But I think it's because you did that this was the fruit.
Yep. And honestly, I don't know where that came from. but it was always there from the beginning. And I think it's because we realized that there's a good chance they're going home. And so to expedite that process, the parents need to do well and need to do well pretty quick.
Yeah.
And through our experience, we realized that part of the reason that the parents are in the situation they're in is because they don't have the support and they don't have the connections and they don't have the know-how to do some of the things that are even being required of them. And so they need people to help them. And the system itself, in our opinion, is not super helpful, even to the bio parents, to help them get to the place that where they can get their kids back. And so we felt like if we could step in and help do that, that was part of our ministry too. It wasn't just about the child.
I know there's more. There's more. And it's one of my favorite parts.
There is more to the story.
To hear this. Yes.
So after all of this reunification and us building a great relationship, one of the challenges though that they still faced as a family is that whenever the children went back to the mom, the dad was not allowed to see them for a while. And it's because the dad was still struggling with his addictions. And so that was we had a relationship, but we did not have a relationship with the dad.
Mm-hmm.
But every time we had an interaction with the dad, it was always positive. And we also found that to be very rare. Not because men are positive, but he was just so thankful for what we were doing. And instead of having like a defensive position toward us or a resentful position that we had his children, I think he realized that we were doing what he couldn't do in the moment. And he was so thankful always. And that attitude came about. Can I say their name?
Yeah.
Their name plays a part. So this family, this young man, his last name is Godwin. So even though at that same court appearance where they gave parental rights back to mom and she got to take them home, the dad was excluded, as I just said, but he was there at that appointment. I went and talked to him and I said, I don't know everything that's happening with you or why you're in the situation that you're in, but your last name is Godwin. Please let God win your story.
Wow.
Please let God win your story.
Wow.
And I just left it at that. And I would say a year after that, maybe several months, it was definitely months, 6 months plus, maybe even up to a year. He did become clean and he reunified with his kids and the kid's mother.
Wow.
To the point that they moved in together. And so he was living with them now. And we were super excited that he was clean, super excited that the kids had a family, had a father involved in their life on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And we could actually see, because we had kept this relationship with them, we could see the kids' behavior improving, actually, because he was now present.
Right.
Especially the little boy, just having a father figure in his life every day.
Yeah.
And we could see that change. So we thought it was very positive. And they told me when we were talking to them that they were still going to church and still involved in church, but they switched churches. And so we were just talking to them about that one day. And I said, I am so proud that you guys are together. I'm glad as a family you're together, that God has brought you this far. But if you're going to be a family and you're going to do it God's way, then you need to be married. I didn't know how that was going to go. Just saying that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an immediate, you're right. Like it was a humble, you're right. We're not doing it God's way and we need to.
Wow.
And it was amazing conversation. And I didn't think it was going to go that way, but that's how it went. And so the mother is who I was talking to when I said that.
Yeah.
And she just said, let me think about it. Maybe a few weeks after that, we had the children again.
Mm-hmm.
They came and stayed with us and we met them to kind of bring the children back to them. Since we lived 2.5 hours away, we kind of met in the middle, and we always meet at McDonald's That's kind of the halfway point. So we met at McDonald's, and while we had them that weekend, she said, "Hey, when you come to meet us and bring the children back, we want you to bring your whole family." Which that's not how we normally do these trips.
Right.
So we brought the whole family, standing in the parking lot at McDonald's, and the mom says, "I have something I want to give you guys." She handed me a piece of paper, and she handed our adopted daughter, which is her biological daughter, a piece of paper. The pieces of paper were wedding invitations.
Wow.
And it was specifically asking my adopted daughter if she would be a bridesmaid for the wedding. And then my piece of paper, she was asking me to walk her down the aisle.
Wow.
And she specifically said, "You're the closest thing to a father I've ever had," which was amazing and very, very humbling. And so a few months after that, November the 1st, they got married, and I had the privilege of walking her down the aisle.
I just have no words.
It's a crazy story. It's amazing. It's a God story. Only God could do this. And everybody involved would admit that.
Yeah.
Like there's no other way to describe.
It's God did win.
Yes, God did win.
He did.
Yes, 100%. So yeah.
That's so incredible. I'm so thankful that you shared this story. One of the things that you and I had talked about was how this whole journey impacted you and your wife. And we talked about your wife was honored in such a beautiful way, and you were honored in such a beautiful way.
Yes.
We didn't discuss any of those conversations that you and your wife had along the journey of all the things.
Yes.
Because what the enemy would love to have done is destroy that family and destroy yours.
100%.
But yet he didn't win. God won.
Right.
But I know, and this is one piece, I want to give you a couple minutes to share more about like what you're working on and what you're doing, because there are so many families that are destroyed in this process.
Yes.
It's all in those conversations and that communication that you and your wife had during this journey. And you were talking about like, well, my wife and I sat down and we had this conversation. And then everything you've talked about, it came back to you and your wife coming together as one and being united in how you walked this journey.
Yes. Yes. So we do not have a perfect family nor a perfect marriage by any stretch. But I think for us, our marriage grew stronger because fostering gave our marriage more purpose.
Yeah.
We met in ministry, and so serving has always been part of our individual DNAs.
Yeah.
And this just became the next version of it, of ministry for us. But having that purpose, having that goal, and knowing that we're not just, and it's not a selfish goal. There was nothing selfish about, we're trying to help other people. And we believe we were doing what God wanted us to do.
Right.
We were just going to do it together. And it was the belief that that's part of why God brought us together in the first place. Like we didn't, it goes back to that, is God in control? Did God arrange all of this? Yes. And having that foundational belief, I didn't meet my wife by accident. I don't believe that. We didn't fall in love by accident. God orchestrated it all. And even at the time when it was orchestrated, we didn't know fostering was in our future. He was still preparing us for it all along the way. And so it just gave our marriage even more purpose. And realizing once we got into it, how big of a need it was, it didn't stop us, right? We just kept taking in more and more children, up to the point at one point when we took in these two babies, we had 9 kids at that time. That was the largest it's ever been, but we got up to 9. And, as unusual as that is to have that many children, that still was not by an accident. My mom used to run a daycare. And so I grew up with large amounts of kids my whole life. And even though I didn't personally desire that or think that was going to be in my future, God had prepared me through my mom's childcare and daycare to take care of large groups of people. My wife's degree is in elementary education.
Wow.
She had been formed and trained on how to take care and manage a lot of children at once.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like David facing Goliath. God had prepared David as a shepherd to deal with what he was going to deal with Goliath, and God had prepared our whole background up to this point to foster. And so just seeing all of that and knowing that we were doing what God wanted us to do gave us confidence.
Yeah.
And as I told you before, realizing that God is faithful and having that kind of reaffirmed every single new child
Yeah.
that came into our home, you just trusting. But yeah, it did involve a lot of conversations and a lot of serious ones. We also made a promise when we first started fostering that we would never take a child without talking about it first. And they always called my wife. Like they never called me to ask, did we want a child? They always called my
Yeah.
wife. But my wife promised that she would never say yes without us talking about it first. And
That's awesome.
we didn't say no very often, but we have said no.
Yeah.
But it was always after both of those scenarios, was always after we had a conversation about whether or not we thought this was the right timing, God's timing for our family and everything else.
Yeah.
So that was very, very important. And yeah, we had a lot of late night conversations. Once the kids got to go to bed, whether they would stay in bed or not, that was another thing.
Yes.
But
Oh, yeah.
any time we had those few moments, they were pretty intense conversations about children and what's going on and how we thought we should proceed with it.
I love it. So, talk to me now. Share a little bit more about what you're doing with your survey. And we're going to share a survey with our listeners today in the show notes and your impact of what you're working on now.
So, in addition to being a foster parent, I'm also a professor at Auburn University, and I teach in the communication department. But one of the classes I teach is family communication. And because of my experience in foster care, I am trying to do some research related to fostering and marriage. And specifically, how does fostering affect or impact foster parents' marriages? And so I've created a survey, and the link will be available to you guys. The surveys confirm, and what past research says is that because of the stress specifically involved with fostering, it usually does have an effect and an impact. And the way I've heard it explained before is that when you foster, it doesn't strengthen or weaken your marriage. Fostering just magnifies what's already there. So if it was already strong, it's probably going to get stronger. If it was weak and the communication was difficult, it's probably going to make it more difficult.
Right.
But that's why we're trying to do research, because it's not just, is this a problem? But if it is, how can we in the foster care world, especially the support systems, help foster parents and their marriages so that their marriages can be strong so that they can foster? Because personally, part of the reason I got interested into this is because one of our children that we fostered and eventually we adopted, not the young lady that we've been talking about, but another child that we adopted. We were the 7th foster family he lived with in 2 years. He was just moved constantly. And part of the reason he was moved is because of the marriages of the foster families he was staying with. Their marriages were difficult and under a lot of stress and strain, to the point where they had to make a decision. Do we keep fostering and potentially wreck our marriage, or do we need to step out of fostering to try to save our marriage? And 2 of his foster families stepped out of fostering altogether to try to save their marriage, which was great for their marriage, but not great for him.
Right.
And so that's actually what got me personally invested into this. Is we need train, especially with all the continuing education that foster families do.
Right.
I'm a big believer that we need a marriage strengthening component to the continuing education, because it's only going to make the families more stable and ultimately the attachments more stable if the marriage itself is stable.
100%. I feel like when you're a foster parent, buttons that you did not even know you had
Yes.
get pushed.
Yes.
And so much more than even being a biological parent, because these kids are coming from trauma that we can't even wrap our minds around.
Right.
And so they have become very intelligent with getting their needs met.
Yes.
And they analyze every single thing. And sometimes I would say like they're like mini CIA, operatives, because they're hyper vigilant. And so they're paying attention to everything. And in that paying attention to everything, they're looking for all your weak spots. They're doing that to survive.
Yes.
So I had buttons I didn't even know existed. And then exiting the foster care world, I had traumas I never imagined I would have.
Yes.
And the amount of sorrow, grief, I mean, I don't think there's anything that can gut you more emotionally than loving a child with all your heart and then losing that child and then doing it again and again and again and again. You become so marked.
Yes.
That the only person who can heal that wound is, of course, Jesus, our Father.
Right.
And Holy Spirit working.
Yes.
But truly, if you're not on the right and the same page with your significant other or your spouse, it's going to be that much more challenging. I love it. I'm so thankful for everything you shared. Such a beautiful story of redemption and restoration and God's timing and his provision and his calling and anointing. And I could go on and on. If there was one thing that you would like to share with the audience as we close us out, what would it be?
Everybody has a story, including your birth parents. You might be the very person that God has put into this birth parent's life.
Oh.
And so don't be afraid to let God use you in that relationship as well, because it can be redemptive. God is not through with them. And even if they lose their child, God is not through with them. God is a resurrection God, and he can bring everybody's life back from the dead. So don't lose hope in them.
Amen. You might be the very last person at the end of the line to help them. And you don't want to miss that opportunity. Thank you so much for being on this episode. If you can, all of these incredible listeners can do me a huge favor, go to the show notes, complete the survey. Let's help get this project off the ground and running. I'm just so thankful that you are here today. And everybody have a beautiful day. We will see you next time on the next episode.
Hey friend, I hope that you loved today's episode. I pray it blessed you and helped you see that you have a friend in your corner who truly understands what you're walking through. If so, would you share this episode with someone who's been praying for a breakthrough in their own journey? It would also bless me big time and help others to find this podcast if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also submit your questions, topics that you would like covered, and find a community of like-minded mamas in my private Facebook group by searching What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting on Facebook. See you next time.